Hello everyone, my name is Mohd Haqimy bin Muhammad Rosmady, matrix number 208316, and I'm a TESOL student from University Putra Malaysia, and today we are going to take a look at Sonnet 18 by William Shakespeare. Sometime around the year 1600, the one and only, the legendary William Shakespeare decided to write 154 sonnets that would comprise some of his most unusual and well-known work and would provide us a rich source of poignant and beautiful poetry. If you ask me, why Shakespeare? Why poetry? It's because poetry helps us to be a better person. It helps us to communicate with our humanity and makes it much more easier for us to be a much more decent person. Let's be honest here, the world, our life can sometimes be excruciating, it can be hostile, it can be lonesome, and sometimes difficult. And it is extremely difficult to connect with ourselves or with other people. Nobody seems to understand what we are feeling. Our emotion stirring deep within us is only suffered by us and us alone. But poetry changes that. It changes the entire concept. By writing poetry, let's say Shakespeare is writing the poetry, every emotion he felt is well written. It's as if he has went through the same ordeal, the same experience that we have, and we can relate to his poetry, even though sometimes, or should I say most of the time, his poetry displays a confused but passionate person trying to chase or pursue his dreams, which sometimes represent us in a way. Before we give the poem a listen, I would like to ask you one simple question. Do you know what a sonnet is? Now, I know some of you might say yes, and some of you might say no, but don't worry, I'll break the ice by giving you a quick definition of a sonnet according to this context. Now, a sonnet is a 14-line poem, and during the olden days, it used to be a 14-line love poem. If you ask me, if your lover wrote you a sonnet instead of writing you a simple text through WhatsApp, it's definitely much more romantic, much more memorable, but maybe it's just me. Anyways, a sonnet follows a standard format. It is broken up into 4 sections, with the first 3 sections having 4 lines each, and it is followed by a section with only 2 lines each, called the couplet, and it rhymes. The entire sonnet rhymes. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Two are more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is its gold complexion dim, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair taos, nor shall death break through wondrous initiate, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long live this, and this give life to thee. There you go, a recital of the poem by me myself. I hope you guys did enjoy listening to it, even though it may sound a bit rusty, but I would like to give you all a friendly reminder. I'm not Shakespeare, nor I am an experienced poet, but it's fun experimenting with new things, you know. I did give my effort, I put my effort into it, and I think that's what matters the most. However, I personally believe that this poem is absolutely beautiful. The words used is absolutely stunning. It truly lives up to, you know, the name, to Shakespeare's standard. Even, you know, the words is suitable enough for a sonnet. Like I said before, sonnet is supposed to be a love poem. We'll find out together who Shakespeare or the narrator is truly in love with. Now, as we analyze the poem, I would like to divide the entire poem into several quatrains or into their respective stanzas. I think I'm gonna use stanzas. We're gonna interpret stanza by stanza, lines by lines, and not to forget the couplet. The couplet is the last 2 lines located at the bottom of the poem. The couplet is really important because it's going to contain the answer that we are looking for regarding who actually is the lover, the beloved, who is he. So let's start with the first stanza. Now, the first stanza, the first line, it sounds like this. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Now, at the start of the poem, it's already started off with a question. It may sound like a simple question, or it may sound like a complicated question, but we as the reader, this is the first line that we will encounter. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? I do know what summer is. It's a season. Maybe not in Malaysia. Maybe it's not available in Malaysia. Okay, what am I talking about? It's always available in Malaysia. Like in Malaysia, we only have 2 seasons. Rainy, sunny. Rainy season, like the monsoon season. Sunny is like summer. It's summer all year long. But we have to remember that the narrator or the poet is Shakespeare. And Shakespeare is from England. England is one of those countries that have 4 seasons. They have, I'm not according to their arrangement, they have 4 seasons, which are summer, winter, autumn, and summer has got to be the shortest season in England. So the narrator, we know that the narrator is wondering if he should compare his beloved to summer, which creates a metaphor that is used throughout the entire poem between summer and his beloved thee. Let's move on to the second line. Two are more lovely and more temperate. The narrator is saying that his beloved is much more lovelier than summer and more temperate. Now, what does temperate means in this context? Temperate in this case refers to how much more persistent his beloved is compared to summer. Like I've said before, summer isn't persistent enough. It's only a temporary season. It comes and goes. I believe in England, summer lasts for 3 months, starting from June until August. So there's only like so much time that you can enjoy and admire the beauty that summer has to offer. But with the beloved, you don't have to wait for a particular season for the lover to come. It's always there. The beloved is persistent to stay with the narrator compared to summer. Now let's move on to the third line. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Now, you might get the wrong idea. The darling buds of May. Could May be a person? No, May isn't a person. I'll break the ice for you. May in this context is referring to the Mayflower. I'm going to include a picture of the Mayflower on my left. So we do know that summer, sometimes it does get windy, and in summer is the particular time of the year for flowers, a vast variety of flowers to propagate. They are going to release their spores to the air, and that's why we hear some cases, maybe online or maybe in the news, if you are caring enough, that people from European country or any other countries that have 4 seasons, a lot of individuals fall sick or they have like this kind of heavy flu, especially during summer, because at that time the air is infested with spore, with sporadic dust, and their immune system is compromised. Their immune system isn't strong enough to handle all of those microscopic invasions coming through, going on inside of their body, because they are breathing in the air through their nostril. So they are like, taking in all those microscopic spores. You can't even see them, but they still exist, which also creates some sort of metaphor. The beauty of summer could be destroyed. Those rough winds are fading or like eating off the beauty of summer. Like, of course, during summer you would like to see all those flowers, but due to the rough winds, the main source of beauty for summer is being destroyed one by one. It's safe to say that the beauty of summer is not as everlasting as the beauty possessed by the beloved. And the last line for the first stanza is, "And summer's leaves have all too short a date," which clearly addresses that summer is simply too short. I've already stressed how short summer is minutes ago. We don't have to dwell too much on it. And what does the lease refers to? Now, the narrator of Shakespeare is personifying summer as having a lease with nature. You know, like summer is taking out a lease for nature, and that lease, that particular lease, has a very short expiration date. Now let's move on to the second stanza. I personally believe the second stanza is pretty much straightforward. There's not plenty to explain aside from the components and elements of the stanza itself. The stanza starts with the line, "Sometimes too hot for the eye of heaven shines." For our younger readers, they might get confused over this line compared to more matured readers. They might literally interpret this line to heaven is directly staring at you during summer. No, it's not. Actually, the eye of heaven is a metaphor for the sun. And the narrator is saying that sometimes the sun is a bit unbearable. It's too hot. And the second line of the second stanza is, "And often is his gold complexion dim," which means sometimes the sun rays are blocked by the clouds. We do know that in summer, the sky might get a little bit cloudy, which will block the sun from being visible. His gold complexion. Now, don't go staring out at the sun because it might injure your vision. Just Google it up and you'll understand that the sun radiates a yellowish, or should I say, a royal golden texture, an expression to it. And for the third line, "And every fair from fair sometimes declines." The narrator is saying that eventually everything beautiful will come to an end. There is also, if you notice, there is also alliteration at play. Take a look at fair from fair. Each word starts with the consonant F. For the final line, "By chance or nature's changing course untrimmed." Now, the narrator is saying that beauty will fade either by bad luck or from natural causes. The word untrimmed is defined as lacking in ornament or decoration. The consonant is found between chance, nature, and changing, which emphasize the sound ch. Try reading it with me, try and pronouncing it with me. Chance, chance. You'll notice the sound ch at the beginning of change. Chance, chance. Nature, nature. And changing, changing. And finally, we have reached the third stanza. But before we begin interpreting the stanza line by line, I would like to remind that the poem will take a different approach. If you are the narrator, you should read the poem with a different tone of voice. You know, instead of just comparing the beloved tea to summer, you must treat as if summer is the beloved tea itself. Or is it? Well, the stanza starts with, "But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair towers," which implies heavily that the beloved's beauty will never fade. It's permanent, unlike of summers, unlike of us humans, you know. You will never stay beautiful. You will get old, and as you get older, your beauty will also fade away. Should you compare yourself to summer? Let that be a question to be answered later. And the stanza progresses with the line, "Nor shall death break thou wanderest in his shade." Death will not be able to claim the beloved's soul. And the narrator is also personifying death, since death is bragging, you know. Death is unseen, it's unpredictable. It might happen to me, it might happen to you, it might happen anytime. And in a few cultures, a few certain religion, death is depicted as a ghastly figure wearing black garments and wielding a scythe, ready to harvest all the lives that have ran out of time in this world. I know you've seen it in cartoons and even in movie, but it's nice that, death is given some sort of personality in this poem. And for the final line, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. I would like to emphasize on eternal lines. The eternal lines here is a metaphor to poetry, or exactly referring to the sonnet itself. As time passes, this poem and many other poems published by Shakespeare will continue to grow even after the narrator is long dead. Shakespeare is already dead. He passed away centuries ago. He's no longer with us, but I'm still analyzing this poem. I'm still looking through his poetry online, and his poetry is also available in library, even online. It's growing with the passage of time. For the last segment of my video blog, let's recap what we've learned so far from the sonnet. As most Shakespeare sonnet, it contains 14 lines and has a rhyme scheme of AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. The sonnet opens with a question, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? We do not know who T is, but the poem does leave us with several clues. On line 11, for instance, he writes, "No shall death break though wandereth in his shape." He uses the word his, so we know that T is a male. Furthermore, on line 12, when in eternal lines to time thou growest, Shakespeare uses the word eternal lines as if acknowledging that this is a poem. Hence, our narrator is actually writing a poem, when line 13 and 14, which is the couplet, clearly supports this claim. Now, the couplets read like this. So long as man can breathe or eyes can see, so long live this and this give life to thee. The narrator is saying that as long as people read this poem, then T shall live on in the hearts of men. If the narrator admits that he is writing a poem to the narrator's beloved, which is the poetry or his poetry itself. So why did Shakespeare write this? Shakespeare wrote a poem about narrator writing a poem that is about the narrator's poetry never fading away. In a way, Shakespeare himself is the said narrator, and it is safe to assume that Shakespeare wrote this poem because he clearly knows that his work, such as his plays and future sonnets, will forever live on. And if so, his sonnets and plays are an extension of himself, which poetically means Shakespeare and his beloved poetry is immortal, as long as people keep on appreciating and admiring his work. I believe that's all from me. Thank you for watching my video blog from start to the end.